Amen. I don't know if you have spent any time around newborns lately, but if you have, you would know that they're pretty pathetic. They can't really do anything to take care of themselves. They can't dress themselves, they can't feed themselves, they can't do the important stuff in life, they can't hold down a job or anything. I mean, even the very basic stuff, they can't burp themselves. That's a pretty basic function of human beings that they need help with. Or they need help sleeping, or at least my kids did for about 6 years. They need help figuring out how to do that. Or they actually, and you probably all know this, but it's really amazing when you think about it, they need help supporting their head. Their head is so big and their neck is so tiny that newborns need help supporting it. Otherwise, it's go all limp on you. Now this is incredible really when you compare it to the rest of the animal kingdom. Most babies, like if you think of zebra babies or horse babies, they come out and they're jumping and bouncing around within minutes of birth. But a human baby, it takes years to do this. Almost 2 years before you're really jumping around. I think about this when we read the gospel for today. I think about what this means. Now this happened again 2,000 years ago as well, so we've got to think back before trained doctors and nurses, before there's an operating room just one floor below in case there's an emergency, before germ theory and sterilized equipment. Before all of this, this is in the dark, in a barn. This is after a long day's journey. These people are exhausted. They've traveled from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And 15 years ago, my wife and I did part of this trip, just a section. And I was exhausted by the end. And I was not at the time 9 months pregnant. So I can't even imagine how exhausted this couple would be. And that's where the baby was born. This is also a time when it was not that uncommon for the mother or the baby to die in childbirth. This is how the creator of the universe, how the maker of all things, the author of life, the one who spoke the stars and the sun into the sky, this is how he entered the world. He became one who didn't have the neck strength to hold his head up. That's how fragile our God became. And I think about this, especially, of course, on Christmas Eve. I think about how delicate God was, how nakedly vulnerable. And how much it is like this candle flame. I've got to walk slowly, because if I don't, I can very easily snuff it out. If I speak too loudly, or if I blow out too much air as I speak, I could snuff it out. How fragile this is, how delicate, and how fragile and delicate our God became. And if we think about this, if we truly understand this, and I know this is impossible for human beings for any length of time, but maybe for just a moment tonight, maybe for just a small period of time, you can think about our God becoming this small and fragile, and just for a little while, you can stop pretending. Stop faking it. Stop acting like you are the strong one. Stop acting like you've got it all figured out, because you don't. If just for a few moments you can give up the charade and just acknowledge, like every single other person on this planet, you are just making it up as you go along. You have no more idea what tomorrow's going to bring than anyone else. We're all in the same boat. We are all weak. If our God, again, the one who spoke the sun into the sky, became as small and delicate as this flame, small and delicate that he couldn't hold his head up, so too we can, if at least to ourselves, I know it's hard and it hurts, but it's true, at least to ourselves admit that we are limited, we are small, we are weak, and we are mortal. And we can do so, as the angels tell us, without being afraid. Because there is something else that's true about this light, and of course about the baby Jesus, the light of Christ. And that's that there is a great deal of power in this candle flame. This candle flame banishes the darkness. That's what it does. If you imagine just for a second, 2 rooms, maybe in a basement, without any doors or windows to get in. So it's a pretty terrible basement. But just imagine it for a second. And in one of these rooms, they're right next to each other, one of these rooms has got light. Maybe it's got a bulb hanging from the ceiling with one of those little chain turn-on switches. And the other one has no light at all. It's completely dark, and there's a door in between. Now just imagine for a second opening up the door between those 2 rooms. The dark room would be bathed in light. The light would just come tumbling in and banish the darkness, so there would be no more darkness in that room. The room that started out lit will not grow any darker at all. That's what light does. Light conquers the darkness. It's not even a fair fight. Light swallows up the darkness without even breaking a sweat. And that's what this candlelight does. That's what the light of Christ does. And if we can gather our fragile lights of Christ that all of us have, that fragile, vulnerable, open light of Christ within each of us, and if we can gather that together and combine them, miracles happen. We see the very glory of God, that glorious light that Jesus promises us. If we can gather together and with one voice gather our lights together, we banish the darkness that surrounds us, the darkness that is within us. That's the promise. That's what we're doing here. That's why we gather. And that is a promise that we hold on to, not just for Christmas Eve, but forever. Amen.